All right, so my name is Malcolm Dorsey. I'm CEO of Torr Metals. With that, today I'll be doing a presentation about Torr Metals and our projects, what we're focusing on right now in 2025, and what we'll be doing going on into 2026. So with Torr Metals, really what we're looking to do fundamentally is defining brand new discoveries among copper and gold giants. We're listed on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol TMET. So during this presentation, there'll be some forward-looking statements that I make. So with that, just keep in mind that any comparisons that are made are not necessarily indicative as well of what the style or extent of precious metal or base metal content is on our projects or any of our targets. A lot of these comparisons are made just for geological context. So in terms of Torr metals, really, I think what we're poised for here is pre-discovery. So looking for these brand new breakthrough discoveries. We're looking for them within prime jurisdictions. Ideally, the ongoing MO for all three of our projects. We have two copper gold porphyry projects in British Columbia and one orogenic gold project in Northern Ontario. It's really to make sure that we're adjacent to infrastructure, roadways. That brings down exploration costs, make sure we can put more money into the ground. Also works towards the ultimate goal here of moving towards transaction or acquisition potential, as that is really at the top of many major miners' list, is that access to infrastructure first and foremost. With that as well, all these ideas were conceptually developed in-house by myself and staked. So the majority of the projects, we have just over 1,300 square kilometers, are 100% owned. With that, we do have a 57 square kilometer option on our flagship Kolos copper gold project in southern British Columbia. That option agreement was made this past March of 2025 to acquire the Bertha target. And what we've done is to define multiple opportunities. So not only do we have three projects, our main focus currently is on the Kolos copper gold project and the Filion gold project, Kolos being the primary focus. What we've done over the last 2 years is define four new copper gold porphyry targets at Kolos. They're just located right off of highways in a prime mining jurisdiction, actually the highest copper producing district in British Columbia and Canada as a whole is where the Kolos project is located. So of those four targets, we're currently drilling the first. Any of these four are highly compelling, brand new copper gold porphyry targets. And with that first drilling, we're looking for proof of concept. And our focus, as we'll go into, is on our highest grade target on the Kolos project. We've also defined two more undrilled orogenic gold targets on our Filion gold project in Northern Ontario. And then, of course, with all of this, so it's adjacent to highways, access to roads, towns, infrastructure. So it's meaningful jurisdiction for a new discovery to be made. And it's also keeping the majors as our neighbors. So with that, you're going to recognize a lot of big names that are located around our projects. That's to facilitate not only do these majors have assets or looking to acquire assets in the region, but really being more attractive in that we've got them as neighbors, we've got infrastructure at the top of our list, and now we're looking for brand new opportunity. So what we're focusing on is really those four high-grade copper and gold porphyry targets on our Kolos copper gold project in southern BC. And with that, we're also located between three major operating mines. So keeping in mind that all these mines are going to have the need for near-term feed. So it's also leveraging that any major new discovery is going to be highly attractive to any of those operators as potential additional feed. In terms of management, so myself, exploration geologist, structural geologist background with over 13 years experience. I worked for major miners, mid-tiers, juniors, ended up more in a niche market with project development, acquisition, review, developing projects from early stage up to maiden resource. With that, we have paired it together with John Williamson, who's chairman. John has headed more than 30 public companies, has a wide range of capital markets experience, Most recent successes for John would have included Thesis Gold, Benchmark Metals up in the Tudagon district of northern British Columbia. We've also added to that Gordon Maxwell. So Gordon brings in some more of that major mining expertise. He served as most recently as business development manager and exploration manager for Glencore. And I was very pleased when I was able to bring Gordon onto our board of directors as well, with his porphyry experience, as well as that connection, making sure that we develop all of this in a way that is recognizable and going to be appreciated by major mining companies. In terms of capital structure, so a few updates that I'll have to make to this page as well, but we're sitting at about 83 million shares outstanding, fully diluted. We're just over 100 million, currently trading around 19 cents and about a $15 million market cap. In terms of warrants as well, we're going to have to increase that to about 21 million warrants, mostly between the 20 to 25 cent range. And then with insider ownership, so about 12% of the company is still owned by management or insiders. That I personally control about 4 million shares within the company as well, around the majority around the 30 cent range. So this page, I like to just bring up the value of greenfield discovery, a number of examples that can be made even more recently within British Columbia, with A-Mark's discovery of the Aurora deposit last year, as well as I like to point to GT Gold and the transaction that occurred there back in 2021 when Newmont acquired it for about 400 million Canadian. I like GT Gold because what that actually is more of a mid-tonnage, high-grade porphyry system, and that is really what we're targeting as well. One, because I know that is what major miners are looking for in British Columbia, and two, what we're looking for is a new Afton style deposit with our first drill target. That we have our inaugural drill program ongoing, just looking to wrap it up shortly here on our Kolos project. So we'll be going a little more into detail on that, but on this page here, you can see the location of our Kolos project between the town of Merritt and the city of Kamloops in southern British Columbia. This is BC's premier copper producing district. So this is where you get most of BC's producing copper mines. This also makes it Canada's largest copper producing district. And you can see really the focus of that with the number of majors that are in here. There's 9 altogether, with the recent arrival of Core Mining and their bid to take over New Gold, which holds the new Afton deposit just about 30 kilometers to our north. That's a $7 billion transaction that has been proposed for the acquisition of New Gold, which really only holds 2 assets, the principal asset being New Afton. So in addition to that, we've got a number of operating mines, but what we focused on is in an area that is largely underexplored in close proximity to these mines with that highway access. So with the work that we've done, we've defined an area that's about 12 square kilometers of copper anomalism. A lot of that is coincident with large-scale geophysical anomalies, and none of our 4 main targets that we've defined over the last 2 years have had any drilling. So really, this drill program that we're doing on the Kolos project is the first ever that's been done on any of these targets that we've defined. So these are brand new targets, brand new ideas and concepts. With that, our main focus where we're drilling right now is in the northwest portion of the property that's outlined by the yellow here. So that is called the Bertha target. So with that, we collected rock grab samples this past summer that came back almost 17% copper from a historical exploration pit that actually produced about 30 tons at 2.14% copper. So those type of grades and the type of alteration and geology that we saw in the exploration pit looked highly comparable to what the new Afton mine is, which is about 28 kilometers to the northeast of Bertha. So New Afton is the focus because that really is one of the highest grade copper gold porphyry mines in British Columbia. The only other mine that actually rivals it is the deeper portions of the Red Chris mine in the northern portion of British Columbia. So that is what we're looking for because it's mid-tonnage, it's high grade. We know that this is what majors are looking for within the region, and with that, it's leveraging the potential here for finding something that looks like New Afton at Bertha, that we're going to be able to define whether or not that comparison is true with this inaugural drill program of up to 2,800 meters. But that is what we're looking for first and foremost. We're going to follow that up with our other 3 targets here. Sonic, which is just to the east of Highway 5, as well as Kirby and Lodi to the south. All these other 3 targets exhibit large-scale geochemical anomalies typical of these types of porphyry systems. They also, at Lodi and Kirby, have coincident geophysics that shows deep-reaching potential of these systems. And something that we see with comparisons as well is we're very excited about the Sonic Zone to the east of Highway 5. You'll see that's just to the east of our Bertha target where we're drilling. We're seeing some strong comparisons here to the Ajax deposit, also not by coincidence, about 30 kilometers to the northeast of our Sonic Zone. And this is because really what I think we're working on here, what we've defined, is a paralleling system similar to the Iron Mass batholith that was host to the New Afton and Ajax deposits. There's structural symmetry between the two, therefore a structural link as well that could be controlling the distribution of these porphyry systems. So what we did this past year at the Bertha target, we defined a very large brand new IP geophysical anomaly. So you can see the chargeability displayed in plan view on the left-hand side, the location of the historical exploration pit at Bertha just to the north. And this really spoke to us that there's a large geophysical anomaly here, never been drilled before, seems to be associated with these coincident high grades at surface in outcrop, with the extension towards the Bertha south there, where rock grab samples of almost 6% copper were collected. And we could see in section that this is a large system with dimensions very similar to the New Afton deposit. Host geology alteration looked very comparable when we were looking at the Bertha exploration pit. And you can see in that figure on the left-hand side as well, to the right, is a comparison of what the surface of the New Afton deposit looked like in a historical exploration pit from the 1970s. Within that pit, they produced about 23 million tons at 0.9% copper and 0.6 grams per ton gold. So this style of system has the potential to be very much higher in terms of grade than the average that you would see in British Columbia, and that's why we're targeting this specifically, together with the fact that it's a much more condensed porphyry system. So New Afton has about 2 billion pounds of copper, 2 million ounces of gold, but all that is within less than 100 million tons. So small to mid tonnage, which is something that a junior explorer can certainly do on their own without having to enter into JVs or anything like that to advance the target. But in addition to that, we've got a greater than 10-kilometer corridor in the northern portion of the project, extending all the way from our rhyolite occurrence in the west to just east of the Sonic Zone in the eastern portion of the project. This, we see high-grade copper and gold throughout it. The gold content is often associated with the peripheral porphyry systems, such as at Meadow Creek and Plug. Our 2 main focuses being Bertha, where we're currently drilling, and then the Sonic Zone, where we see a very large-scale anomaly, much larger than Bertha, but more comparable to something like Ajax, which is a greater than 500 million ton porphyry deposit, where you could expect more average grades of around 0.4%, which is similar to what we're sampling in outcrop at surface. As stated before, we've got large-scale geophysical anomalies. At Sonic, it's actually 4.5 square kilometers. As at Bertha, it's undrilled. We've collected another 1,500 soil samples this past year to expand on that soil anomaly towards the south. And what we're looking for there is really to build out the footprint of this. We know there's surface mineralization to the south, not part of the current soil anomaly. Very excited as the historical results here came back with just over 4,500 ppm copper in outcrop and just over 500 ppb gold. So a significant copper gold porphyry system And we have the potential here, I think, with assays to double the size of it. And it's currently already 4.5 square kilometers. So that is something Sonic, we're looking to get a drill permit on Sonic by spring of 2026, which is around the time that we plan to return to the Bertha area to continue drilling in the spring of 2026, as we're fully funded at this point for an additional 6,000 meters of drilling. And then we also have our Kirby and Lodi targets. So Kirby, Lodi, and Sonic really add value, I think, and incentivization to the Kolos project. That we've got these large-scale copper gold porphyry systems. We have 4 that are very compelling. We're going for the highest grade potential first at Bertha, but we've also got Kirby, Lodi, and Sonic that all add that added value, that upside potential to a project, which in the case of a transaction or acquisition is going to add to that value that a major miner might be looking at when they're doing an evaluation of the project. But same thing, large-scale geochemical anomalies, high grades at surface, up to 0.52% copper and over 4 grams per ton gold in outcrop. And we see that scalability repeated within the soil anomalies. And then we also see deep reaching geophysics. So this was an area that we focused on in 2023, did some Z-temp geophysics, saw a strong coincidence between the surface mineralization, especially in the Kirby zone, and a large Z-temp geophysical anomaly, which speaks to a really broad scale of hydrothermal alteration and mineralization potential that's deep reaching for beyond 1 kilometer depth for sure when we look at in its vertical profile. And add to that, we are doing some work in the past year on the Filion Gold Project. This is our brand new project in Northern Ontario. Same thing, we're looking around multi-million ounce deposits within the region, but the area in the middle was really left untested and underexplored. When I was looking into this area, I was coming up with historical reports that were talking of samples of over 91 grams per ton gold just off of the Trans-Canada Highway 11, northwest of the town of Kapuskasing. So having that access to the highway, to power, to rail, and nearby operating mines that will be looking for additional feed or acquisitions. And we moved in, we did the first ever large-scale geophysics and geochemistry. We collected a number of soil samples, about 1,400. And with that, it returned 2 clusters of over a gram per ton in soil. So that's in our Miller zone and the western portion of what we're calling the Oscar zone. These are the areas where historical high grade was also reported in outcrop. These targets have never been drilled. So this is something that we're looking to advance. Currently, not the main focus as Kolos is, but we're looking at a number of possibilities here in how we can move forward brand new gold discovery potential on our Filion project. So why Torr and why now? When we're looking at Torr, I see a company where we're pre-discovery. So especially with the drilling that we're doing at Bertha right now, we're looking for another new Afton type system, which is high-grade gold, mid-tonnage. It was the highest gold-producing porphyry in British Columbia in 2015. So that is what we're testing first. We're looking to get assays here coming out over the next couple of months, and then we'll be leaning back into another 6,000 meter drill program at least, starting in spring of 2026. We've got a lot going on with that project in terms of additional assays from soil, rock sampling programs. We'll be doing additional IP geophysics as well on the Sonic target in the spring. And we really bring that infrastructure advantage, a diverse high potential portfolio together with the Filion Gold Project in Northern Ontario, and that strategic copper gold commodity focus. So as we move forward here, we're seeing a lot of potential for new discoveries to be made. And with that as well, we can see that appreciation for Torr and what we're doing. And at our current share price, I think there's some significant value that we can look forward to here.
Let's first start off with, could you add some more color on yourself and all about your career?
Yeah, so for myself, so I first started at the beginning working for Newmont Mining. With that, that was up at the Hope Bay project up in Nunavut. And then I moved on to that, onto Sabina Gold and Silver with a lot of the Newmont people that came out of Hope Bay. So some very good experiences early on working for major mining companies and then mid-tier mining companies, and really seeing how they operate, how they approach exploration with a strong focus on structural controls and understanding. And from there, really ended up within consulting roles, working on a number of different projects for different scales of companies and projects and different jurisdictions as well. Ending up working in that area of where developing early stage projects up to maiden resource. I also started my own private project generator with my brother back in 2013. We hold over 150,000 hectares of copper and gold projects throughout British Columbia and Ontario. And really, that's what I wanted to do here, was bring some of that expertise of project generation and development, take it into a public company with Torr, and develop some of these ideas. So with that, I brought all the projects into the company. I staked them for the company when we're looking at Kolos and Filion. And with that, that brought that 100% ownership. And it was to test out some of these new ideas. Where do we start looking when we're looking in these prolific jurisdictions for new areas that have a high degree of potential? And that's what we're looking at with the first drill program going on at Bertha, and then as well working away in the background on our additional targets at Kolos, as well as the Filion Gold Project in Ontario.
How many shares do you hold of Torr metals, and how important is it to your net worth?
Yeah, so I hold just over 2 million shares. My brother also holds just about that amount as well, around the 30-cent range. So it certainly poured a lot of time and effort into those shares. With that, they're priced around the 30 cents. So we certainly want to work towards getting Torr metals into a position in which those are back in the money as well. So there's incentive there for myself.
Yeah, no, for sure, definitely. Okay, but this is essentially a large, maybe your largest equity position.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I would say one of my largest equity positions in a company, and really where I see the value is to bring it all the way to the end product. So with that, the payday comes at the end, along with all the other shareholders, when we move this into potential new discovery and then perhaps into acquisition or transaction.
Then essentially you are, I mean, the VP exploration and the Joel, the CEO as well. So essentially it's you that runs Torr.
Yeah. So I definitely get to sit in that position of where I balance the CEO role together with being VPX. So it certainly led to a lot of late nights drill planning sessions during this first inaugural drill program. But I think it's good in that it provides really hands-on driving forward the geological vision that I've got for Torr Metals and for our projects, and for where I see the best potential for the shareholder as well in creating value.
So who in the team can challenge you when you have a Jolo concept or where to put, the drill hole?
Yeah, so I would say, so certainly, um, yeah, well, with Gordon Maxwell, I brought him onto the board as well for his major mining experience, and also the fact that he has spent many decades, about 4 decades, drilling a number of porphyry targets around the world for major mining companies. So he certainly brings a wealth of experience in drill targeting, in different features and characteristics that he's seen. So he provides that wealth of experience and knowledge as well for when I'm throwing out ideas. And then I do have as a technical advisor my brother. With him, he's actually worked in a number of different roles from myself as well. He's worked on other projects for other companies. He brings some good experience as well. And yeah, even though we're twins, we almost always disagree on things. So it's a good way, a good sounding board to really drive forward. We disagree until we do agree. And it's really at that agreement that we come to a point that we have a very viable target or exploration model that we've developed. So, with that, myself and my brother actually, over the last several years working in this region, I believe we've worked out a very strong exploration model to define at a broader scale when you're looking at a zoomed out view of where would the distribution of new porphyry systems, where would you focus? And that really led for myself. I ended up staking the Kolos project. He ended up staking the Rayfield project for the company that he's VPX of currently, Golden Sky Minerals. They're just located to our north of Kamloops, whereas I'm south of Kamloops. And it's really playing on a lot of the same concepts that we developed, led to the staking of those projects. Most recently, the Rayfield project, Bulletin came in on an earn-in JV without them even drilling the project for a $20 million earn-in JV on the project without a single drill hole. So I think that certainly does speak to the conceptual basis here and the strength of the exploration model.
And who are your key shareholders?
So in terms of key shareholders, so management, I hold a large position. John Williamson, the chairman, holds a large position. And then outside of that, the majority of shareholders are high net worth individuals. A number of them I'm acquainted with directly. And then as well, we do have Valpal as a strong supporter of Torr Metals, and that's been greatly appreciated.
Indeed. So, yes, okay, so then that's the shareholder structure. So essentially, you have 110 million, that's fully diluted, 83 million shares outstanding, warrants between 20 to 25, of which half at least are at 21 cents, I think.
Yeah, about.
And are there any acceleration mechanism on these warrants?
Yeah, so there is an acceleration mechanism on the warrants as well. So with that, yeah, once it reaches, I believe it's over 40 cents for a 10-day trading period.
Could you just briefly summarize the history of Torr Metals and what projects have you worked on at what time, and so from essentially being incorporated, or I guess getting started, to right now?
Yeah, so with Torr Metals, so we got listed in late November of 2021. With that, the original project was the Latham project, which is 689 square kilometers up in the Golden Triangle of northern British Columbia. It's located right on Highway 37, just south of the town of Dease Lake. And there's an airport there as well in Dease Lake. And we actually have the Nat Pass copper gold porphyry deposit there. So it's got a historical non-compliant resource of about 300 million pounds of copper, around 0.4%. And with that, what I really liked about that was the scale and size. The style looked very similar to Saddle North, which was just located about 60 kilometers to our south. But Nat Pass had only been drilled to about 200 meters vertical depth, so it still remained largely open beyond that. Back in 2011, 2012, it was actually Quartz Mountain Resources did some drilling on there, and for the first time defined in 2 drill holes that mineralization could go beyond 500 meters depth. But the gold content remained largely unassayed, unsampled. So that was further upside that we saw with that. Unfortunately, we were not able to get a permit with the Latham project, so we were forced in 2023 to pivot. So that's when I pivoted. Ended up staking the Kolos copper gold project in southern BC, as well as the Filion gold project in northern Ontario. And in 2023, it was really doing the groundwork then starting at Kolos and Filion. So doing that large scale regional geochemical work, doing the geophysics at both Kolos and Filion. So spending the last 2 years really doing that ground based work, the due diligence to develop it in a way that we could now have some viable drill targets. And this is that first year that we're able to drill one of those targets, being the Bertha target on the Kolos project.
What's the current cash position? And I'll start there. Yeah, and do you have any debt? Clarify that as well.
Yeah, so no debt. In terms of cash position, we just closed a financing of 5.3 million. About 2.4 million of that was charity flow through. So that's an important distinction to make because that charity flow through, I'd say more than 90% of the total flow through we raised has gone into private hands. A lot of those hands are high net worth hands. So groups and people, individuals who are going to be supportive of Torr moving forward. So with that, I'm confident that having that flow through, it's not going to come back to us later on. But in total, what do we still have remaining? So we have about 1.7 million in hard dollars. We have very small G&A, so about 40,000 a month. Keep it nice and tight. And then the remaining flow through after this drill program in this season, I would say is about 2.7 million would be my estimate. So still sitting in a very strong position with full funding for an additional minimum of 6,000 meters of drilling that's planned at the Kolos project starting in spring of 2026. So looking at that, we're probably going to, I would say, put about 2/3 of the drilling, so 4,000 meters towards Bertha, and then another 2,000 meters being the first to test the sonic zone just on the east side of Highway 5 there.
And I mean, infrastructure here, so you have close access. How do you actually access? You have a highway that goes into your property, but how do you access Bertha? How do you access Sonic? And I guess also the same question for Kirby and Lodi.
Yeah, definitely. So the phenomenal thing here is not only do we have highway access within a couple kilometers, but then it's well-maintained forestry service roads going beyond that. So we do have road access to all of our 4 primary targets. With that, the road access is quite good, so you could reach it. I do like to say that you could reach all of them with an SUV or a car if you want to. Of course, Bertha is perhaps going to be the one that's a little bit tougher, but you could still reach it with a Subaru Forester, which I've done in March. But outside of that, the other drill targets, those could all be reached with a sedan if you want to. The roads are so well maintained. So certainly drill access here, accessibility via these road networks is phenomenal.
By the way, the power lines that are running here, are those enough to actually support a new mine?
Yeah, so there's 2 major regional power lines that run through, one through the northern portion of the project and one through the south. So those are regional power lines, so they would have that capacity. They are linked up to some of the mines within the region. So we have that access. We have the ability as well that we're only a 2.5 hour drive from Vancouver, which is Canada's largest western port. And then we also have that highway access and railroad access that's right nearby as well. And in terms of lab, so we do have a lab in Kamloops. It's only about an hour's drive from the drill site itself. And that really has allowed us to be more efficient in doing small batching of our samples. So get those delivered every couple of days to the lab to try and accelerate the assay process. So having something like that is pretty phenomenal for the fact that we not only have this high degree of provincial infrastructure, but also mining infrastructure in the region and a skilled workforce to support it.
Yeah, no, that's a big advantage. And what kind of royalties do you have here on the Kolos project?
Yeah, so on Kolos, there's no underlying royalties for about 275 square kilometers. So that's the area that's been staked personally by myself. The remaining 57 square kilometer Bertha acquisition that we made here in the spring of this year, there is a 2% NSR on that with 1% buyback for 1 million. So that's held by the underlying vendor who we acquired it from.
What options payments are outstanding on Bertha?
So in terms of outstanding option payments, we would owe to acquire 100%. The entirety was about $230,000 and about 900,000 shares, together with a $900,000 expenditure commitment. Obviously, we've met that expenditure commitment, so it would just be a remaining about $200,000 and 750,000 shares to acquire the remainder of the property.
Oh, $200,000, yes. And when is that paid?
Oh, it could be whenever we want, so we can accelerate it if we want to. So yeah, I think decision on that will be made here with the assays as they start coming in on the drilling.
What will the all-in meter cost end up with now for the drilling program at Bertha, which was 2,730-ish meters, I think?
Yeah, so I was originally estimating around $400 Canadian per meter all in. So that includes the cost of housing the drill crews and the geology crews in nearby hotels, giving them a per diem to go out to the restaurants. So all in, it's quite cheap in terms of drilling. You have to remember as well that we don't have the expenses of an exploration camp. So we don't need to pay the cost for setting an exploration camp up, for maintaining it. And really, that also allows us year-round operation ability. So with that going forward into the future, there's very little snowfall within this region. So really, it's very simple. If you want to continue a drill program through the winter, you easily could, especially with the highway access to within 5 kilometers of these targets, and the fact that we don't need an exploration camp and crews stay in nearby towns or cities.
So, but did you end up actually 400 meters was budgeted, but was that ended up, or was it?
Oh, we still have to wait for the final cost to come through, and then we can provide an update on on exactly where we ended up. But so far, I would say that if anything, I think we're going to end up perhaps a little under budget. So that's going to allow us some more movement, more room as we look forward to budgeting for the spring drill program.
And if you look at Bertha, has Bertha or the project here been drilled before?
Yeah, so in terms of Bertha, that is what I really liked was the fact that, at least based on historical reports, there was no recorded drilling around the Bertha exploration pit or to the south of it. We are the first ones to define that IP target, so that certainly has never been drilled. Of course, I would expect that there was probably a small amount of vertical historical holes that would be very shallow that were probably done around the pit at some point. That would be typical of the work that they had done, but the pit itself was first opened up about 70 years ago, and then there was some added work that was done about 50 years ago. But that being said, we've never found any recorded evidence of any of the drilling that was done around the Bertha pit. And they would have typically gone vertical as well in that day and age, which, yeah, with the types of systems that we've seen in the Bertha exploration pit, it's a shear vein system along the margins of a Picrite unit boundary. And with that, they are near vertical. So you'll often see happen quite often. Historically, they drill these short vertical holes. They always miss the vertical systems. And so that also leaves a lot of leeway and room to move. And it's important to remember when they first worked in this area, they found Supergene style mineralization in the Bertha exploration pit. And that is same style mineralization that you see at New Afton, but at the time they couldn't process that. So they ended up moving on. They had built a small mill at the Bertha exploration pit. They dismantled it, moved it on. But you zip forward another 30 years or so, and you have the first discovery of New Afton and development of it. And at that time, they could process supergene mineralization. So it was also looking for that, the fact that we're in an underexplored area. They felt this area was worth even building a small mill and pursuing it. And it was just after that point overlooked due to the style of mineralization and the technological processes at the time. So finding stuff like that when you're looking around for new exploration targets, I love finding targets such as this, where there's certainly a lot that is compelling, and yet nobody else followed up on it. So it was left open for us.
But how come really that do you have any explanation for it? Because if you look at the broader Kolos, that hasn't really either been drilled, and to be
No, and that
honest, so
was
why hasn't anyone in the past 20 years picked up Bertha or picked up the other parts of Kolos and put a drill on some of these targets?
Yeah, I'd say a lot of it over the past few decades, it was held on and off by patchwork, local prospectors. So never put together all in one large property. Even the Bertha property itself took the underlying vendor about 25 years to assemble. So that he slowly put together piece by piece every single year. And then we were able to benefit from that. So it was really taking that time. Also, the fact that there's a number of mines in the area. Mines tend to attract and suck up all the attention. With that, people tend to not look with what's elsewhere within the region. And then also just the level of underexplored. So there was really never a focus, no government mapping, very little exploration work that had been previously done. Even the Kirby zone itself was only initially discovered in 2014. So that really speaks to how recently that was even uncovered. And then we were the first ones to even do any of the regional systematic soil sampling. So a lot of what we've soil sampled has never been soil sampled before. And then we've been able to also drive around on a lot of the new forestry roads that have been done. And those have really exposed new areas of mineralization as well, such as up where we've been focusing at the sonic zone. So these areas just were never previously sampled because people were never previously there, or at least it was never recorded that any work was done there.
Essentially, why is New Afton a good comparable to Bertha?
Yeah, so when I went up to the Bertha exploration pit, the first thing that I noticed was the existence of a Picrite unit. So a Picrite is an ultramafic unit. So with that, it's very iron rich and it's very typical. It's in fact probably the most important unit that you would find at New Afton. But it typically, historically, has only been found within the New Afton to Ajax trend. So it's the iron mass batholith. It goes northwest to southeast between New Afton and Ajax, just to our north. So I was surprised to see Picrite in that area because that was, to my knowledge, first time that Picrite has really popped up outside of the New Afton Ajax trend or the iron mass batholith. We had done back in 2023 some compositional studies of our Kirby and Lodi zones and had found that compositionally those intrusive units are very similar to what the iron mass batholith is. So I think what we're starting to put together here is that we've got a strong relation. These units are very likely part of the iron mass batholith as well, just not previously recognized. And yeah, so find that Picrite unit. It's very geochemically reactive. It's a strong structural control as well, as it's impermeable, but also rheologically ductile. So with that, that allows for the concentration and reaction of hydrothermal fluids with the Picrite that can often lead to the precipitation of supergene style mineralization, such as native copper. So that's what I saw as well, was a concentration of native copper along the boundary with the Picrite at the Bertha exploration pit. It's highly oxidized host rock. And then we also see chalcocite, quite a bit of chalcocite within this veining, this sheared veining along the Picrite contact. So all of that, especially the abundance of native copper, together with the highly oxidized supergene style alteration and mineralization adjacent to a Picrite unit, were all boxes that you could tick that bear very strong similarities to the New Afton system.
So essentially, Picrite unit itself is not that is not mineralized, but the margins could be mineralized.
Yeah. Yeah, so you want to look for
And
those
not just the
margins.
margins, I guess. Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, the boundaries, because that's where, like in these supergene environments, what you have is basically a source intrusive unit that came up. It's a high level of emplacement, so it gets exposed to weathering fairly early on. That weathering strips the copper out of mineralization such as chalcopyrite, and that free copper now floats around within these oxygenated waters, hydrothermal fluids, uh, and reacts to anything that's extremely iron rich, such as Picrite. So it's phenomenal when you see something like Picrite, you get that reaction taking place. It's a very strong redox boundary, and you start to get the precipitation of that native copper. So where you get that native copper concentrating along Picrite contacts is where you're going to get some of the higher grades that were typical of the New Afton supergene zone which formed the uppermost open pit area and extended down to 500 meters depth about at New Afton.
Are you saying that the higher grade should be at the boundaries and not just in the supergene enrichment or oxidization that you can see on the IP?
Yeah. So in terms of the IP, what we're looking at there is an area where the volcanic units were of the original host rock Nicola group rocks were adjacent to the Picrite, and then an intrusion comes up exploiting that boundary, basically causes a shattering of that boundary. And so now you have a whole bunch of slivers of Picrite intermixed with this intrusive source. And it's wherever that supergene weathering, oxidation, reprecipitation of native copper, wherever those hydrothermal fluids meet that Picrite is where they chemically react and can precipitate that native copper. So it's that high degree of alteration within that shattered zone or brecciated zone. That's the area that I think is really being defined by the chargeability anomaly, is that high degree of alteration and the potential there for chemically reactive zones or lenses where you see these Picrite units.
So you can see the Picrite units in the chargeability anomaly, so not just at the margin where you have that conductivity anomaly.
Yeah, and you can pick that out in the geophysics. That's what I really like to see, was we can see where the comprehensive Picrite unit that hasn't been brecciated lies in the footwall of the chargeability system. So that was a target as well, targeting that lithological boundary, because we knew it would be chemically reactive, but also looking within that chargeability anomaly that is adjacent to the conductivity of the unaltered Picrite, and looking in that chargeability anomaly where zones of this brecciated, broken up Picrite and intrusive units could be, to look for the style of alteration.
That is still the main target, I guess, the actual, chargeability anomaly.
Yep, that's still the main target. And then it's just making sure as well that we're using the bounding Picrite unit in the footwall as basically a marker horizon of what we can drill into to test the redox boundary that occurs along that, but also looking for those slivers, those lenses of Picrite and mineralization that occurs within the chargeability.
If you compare this to New Afton, so these, hopefully at least you have supergene lenses, and what's in between, and is that material mineralized or can be mineralized if it is a New Afton?
Yeah, so if we are looking at a New Afton comparison, what do we expect to see? So we expect to see these areas where there's precipitation of native copper. That native copper can occur within veining. It can occur as replacements of mafic minerals. And then what we also want to see if we're looking at New Afton is within those higher grade lenses are some strongly oxidized, so hematized intervals of the rock. And the host rock can vary within that. It could be intrusives, it could be host volcanic units, but it's going to be very highly altered, almost hematized clay. And within that are going to be potential for non-observable sulfides. So you might not see it, but when it gets assayed, it's going to come back. It's going to be oxidized. Yeah, so oxidized to hematite. Yeah, so within that, that's where the assays are going to come into play, is showcasing, well, what's the potential in those intervals. We can have ideas of the strength of alteration, but we'll be looking for what the returns are in terms of the assays as well.
What did the New Afton show? Do you know what that essentially oxide deposit or that supergene enrichment produced?
Yeah, so the strongly hematized zones at New Afton, those could produce really, since it is a weathering system, there is a variability, and it can be anywhere between 0.1 up to 0.5%, seems to be typical of a lot of those zones. So we could say averaging around a 0.3% copper or so, but there is potential there as well for it to be much higher. So of course it could run higher than that, but it was highly variable in terms of it being a supergene weathering environment as well.
But yeah, obviously the lenses bring it up. So what did New Afton actually produce with the all as in open pit you mine both lenses and and the
Yeah,
hematite
yeah. So
progression.
I think a good representation of that is maybe the historical. Yeah, yeah. So I think a good representation of that is maybe the historical amount that they mined from the open pit. So there they produced about in the 1970s 23 million tons at 0.9% copper and zero point 0.6 grams per ton gold. So it's looking at those values when I was seeing on a smaller scale at the Bertha exploration pit that they produced 30 tons at just over 2% copper. So that's in the realm of possibilities, something that is comparable to perhaps the overall grades of what they were producing over at New Afton.
But isn't that the Bertha exploration bit? Isn't that mineralization a bit different from that hematite or that supergene enrichment? Or
There is potential for that. Like there is a combination of you, like you are seeing the chemical redox boundary with the Picrite precipitation of native copper within the host rock itself at the Bertha exploration pit. But then there is those sheared vein systems as well that were apparent within it. So those certainly are going to cause a little bit of high grading. And you can see that with some of the rock grab samples that we got from those vein systems running almost 17% copper. So they could run significantly higher. But it still puts you into the realm of that, somewhere around 1 to 2% copper overall.
in terms of gold, and Afton is quite gold rich. What evidence do you have for gold here?
Yeah, so in terms of gold, we can see it. Like, of course, with the sampling that we have done in terms of rock grab sampling from the Bertha exploration pit, which is really one of the only exposures of outcrop in the area, that has showcased to us that there is a variability. You get some very high grade copper with lower but anomalous gold in the background. It would be interesting what I would expect to see based on New Afton as a potential comparison. You can get zones that get more enhanced copper content but lower gold content. Sometimes you can get a strong association between more enhanced copper and gold, or some zones you have lower copper and much higher gold. So it's just a result of that weathering process. Copper is a lot more mobile than the gold content. So you're going to see removal of that copper, stripping of it from the weathering supergene process, and then reprecipitation concentration elsewhere, often along those Picrite boundaries. And then in terms of the gold, it largely remains where it originally was. So with that, I think we're going to get a better idea from the drill assays of what our gold content could be within this system.
With this drilling program, to what depth have you drilled maximum, and have you tested if if there's a hypogene zone here?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So what we've done so far, what we're looking to do with this first up to 2,800 meters of drilling is really we want to test the near surface potential. First of all, head to sea, is the model correct? I with that, of course, we originally were planning for 1,500 meters. I think you can infer what our thoughts were based on the fact that we expanded up to 2,800 meters. And what we started to do then was to step out, so testing deeper extensions. So originally we were planning to test just up to 200 meters vertical depth, ended up going deeper than that, so up to 450 meters in the first 7 drill holes. What we were doing there was testing not just the down plunge extent of the system, but down dip as well. And now what we've done, we have the confidence of our model. We're able to do a 350 meter step out to the west. So we're going to test the Bertha South zone. And with that, that will define a potential 400-meter strike extent to this system that will have been tested by the drilling that we're doing here. And the purpose of
Wait, are
this
you
drill
saying that
hole,
hole 8 is 300 meters, 350 meters south
350-meter
of
step out.
hole, 1 to 4 that you showcased in a news
Yeah,
release recently?
yeah.
Ah,
So
okay. So
it's a big step out, but we've got the confidence. I think we've taken into and confirmed the structural controls on the mineralization here. And what we're looking to do with this step out is to start testing how deep could this supergene zone go. If you look at New Afton, it goes quite deep. It goes up to 450, 500 meters vertical depth. It's Yeah, people do ask how do you get oxidation down to that level? And it's because of the high level emplacement of the system itself early on exposed it to weathering, but you've also got a high degree of permeability. So you have to remember this system is highly fractured, broken up. It allows the fluid flow, very little pyrite content. And so with that, you don't get the reaction of oxygen with the pyrite. So oxygen is able to travel down a bit deeper as well without reacting. So with that, we're testing, do we have something similar? Are we going to see Supergene style oxidation continue, the horizon continue to even deeper levels? So with this drill hole, we're looking to test it beyond 600 meters. So see what goes up to 600 meters and perhaps a little bit beyond it. See if we can start to take into hypogene zone, which would underlie the supergene horizon. With that, the hypogene zone, we would expect to see a shift in the style of mineralization as well. You would see less native copper and chalcocite and perhaps more chalcopyrite or bornite, as well as the style of alteration. You might actually start at that point to see a very discrete phyllic zone or potassic style alteration within it. It's important to note that New Afton, those alteration footprints are very small and discrete. So this is a very unique porphyry copper gold alkalic system in British Columbia. So we're approaching things in a way that we're looking at it that, well, how could this meet a New Afton comparison? And really what we're looking to do off the bat here is define what's the style of alteration, mineralization, what's the scale? Is it a scale that has the potential to be something significant? And then what is the continuation? Can we get an idea of what this thing looks like as we go deeper and down plunge? So we'll be able to do all that, I think, I'm quite confident, within the 2,800 meters. So something that I think we can certainly look forward to over the next couple of months.
I mean, if we are talking 600 meter oxidation, I mean, can you even, how deep can you, because obviously this is not a big footprint, very prematurely, but how deep can you open pit, such a deposit, ballpark?
With something, yeah, with something like this, of course, it all depends on what the lateral extent is for when you're going to go and do an open pit. But if you look at what they were doing at New Afton, they were able to get down, I think, about 200 meters vertical depth, possibly a bit deeper. So there certainly is potential there for some high grade at surface that's able to go into an exploration, uh, into that open pit scenario. And of course, you're also looking at oxidized copper here. So in terms of processing economics, it's very conducive towards that. And especially if we're looking at some of the highest grade by weight copper products. So you're looking at native copper and you're looking at chalcocite. Chalcocite is 80% by weight copper. So you're getting basically the two best styles of mineralization for copper.
What grades would you like to see here for this to be, economically attractive, essentially?
Yeah. Yeah, so really what I want to see, and this is also based on, I know what major miners are looking for, and with those major miners, although some of them are perhaps a bit more copper focused, but what they want to see within BC copper gold alkalic systems is really grades of at least 0.5% copper, and then of course they'd be all over 0.7% copper. So, of course, those are significantly higher grades than what the average is in British Columbia. But that's also why we're targeting another New Afton type system that we believe exists at Bertha, is because that is probably one of the few systems in British Columbia that could deliver those types of grades. So it would be somewhere around that we're looking forward to begin with. Of course, this is the first ever drill testing. So we're going to see what we get back, but I'd say it's going to be highly successful if we can show some significant intervals with average widths that were similar to New Afton, which is around 100 meters width. So if we can get somewhere around there that's greater than like 0.4% copper to start with, I'd be very pleased with something like that.
And then hopefully some gold on top of that as
Oh,
well.
hopefully some gold. We'll add some gold on it. We'll have to see with the assays how those come back. And of course, there is the potential of, if we are hitting some of these higher grade lenses, that we can kind of upgrade those intervals as well. So we'll be breaking that down for investors as the assays come out and bring it out into news releases.
Okay, so are all the holes finished now? All 8 holes?
So we're nearing completion. So we can expect some announcement on that imminently. With that, yeah, so we're looking to do just 8 drill holes. After that, wrap the program up, take the time to step back, get those assays, do the analysis, figure out how can we most effectively and efficiently come back and drill what we see, and where's the best areas for follow-up to add the most value. So that's why we'll take that time, get those assays back, look to return here in the spring.
When do you expect to have your first assays back? How are you thinking around batching and releasing them?
Yeah, so we want to see how the first ones come back and whether or not, if we are gain some good results right off the bat with some of the first holes, then we can put out perhaps one of those first holes as soon as we can. With the fact that our exploration model, I took the time. This is what an exploration model should do, is that when you go in, you should be testing how well has it delivered? Do you need to adapt it? And with that, though, we spent the last 2 years developing, I think, a very strong exploration model. And even that speaks to the fact that we have more than 20 surface occurrences throughout the property of high grade copper and gold. I'm not pointing to all 20 as we need to go to all these sites. So we were able to bring it down to 4 ideal targets. We were able to prioritize them, Bertha being the highest priority. So the exploration model that we developed is a strong model. The drilling is testing it. So we'll be able to, I think, turn around pretty quickly on the interpretation side of things. So we'll see how quickly we can do that. It all depends on speed of the labs at this point. But we do know that 4 of the drill holes are prepped. So now it's just a matter of running the analyses. And then as soon as we get those, we can look towards what offers the best value in terms of how we put these out, and then whether or not we batch them to create greater context. But we can expect assays to start coming out over the next couple months.
Yeah, I mean, say that you have 0.7% copper, and that's fantastic. But if you can just open pit this down to 250 meters or something, or even 300, so then you have another 300 meters or whatever it is, with oxides, same type of mineralization. Can you even mine that underground?
Yeah, well, that's been a lot of what's been done at New Afton. After the initial open pitting was done, they did come back eventually and more recently started up what was the first block caving operation in British Columbia. So they've been able to showcase that they've been able to develop underground. Doing underground mining of this material hasn't been an issue.
That they have a slightly. I mean, haven't they? Yeah, what's the grade profile right now? 0.7 for both copper and gold.
Yeah, in terms, it gets pretty close to 0.7 for both. Yeah,
Okay,
so
well,
some
yeah,
very good grades that continue, and they're continuing to look for expansion, but of course that's at depth. So this is something else as well. When we're looking at New Afton, the mill that they have there, so with the production value that's going on, if we're able to find a brand new discovery, that's another New Afton style system that's only 30 kilometers away, that's certainly going to attract attention, as they're actually slated to come to the end of their resource and reserves by about 2031. So they only have about 6 more years left. As is, I believe their mill is only running at about 85% capacity. Some of that, though, was being fed by some additional gold projects that were even as far away as 100 kilometers away. Those gold projects have come to an end. So there's a potential here as well that their mill might even be running at lower capacity than that. So this is certainly something that we're looking to leverage, is the potential is for as additional feed, near-term feed for some of these people that already have assets and operations in the area and are going to need that material.
I think that's it for now on Bertha. So we'll stay tuned on that. And then we got Sonic. Could you essentially, by the way, first of all, before we go into Sonic, the Ajax deposit, what is the copper and gold grade on that, and what's the tonnage? Did you say 500 million tons?
Yeah, so that one it's just over 500 million tons. With that, the grade is around, I believe it's around 0.46 or 0.5% copper and about zero point 0.4 grams per ton gold. So more of your, yeah, it's very good grade.
It's not a typical BC, porphyry that's 0.5% copper equivalent or lower.
Yeah, no, like even in terms of comparisons, you're correct in that this is something that is above the average as well of other copper gold porphyry alkalic systems in BC. It's a larger deposit, so it's about 3 billion tons of, or 3 billion pounds of copper, 3 million ounces of gold. So that's something that, yeah, it's very interesting that you see New Afton and Ajax continue on this northwest, southeast trend. If you go parallel to that, just 30 kilometers to the south, Bertha and Sonic shared that exact same trend and show up at those exact same junctions
Well,
between
why
north,
isn't
north, south.
Ajax a mine?
So Ajax, the one thing they did historically, they did a small open pit there. And then during economic cycles, it wasn't always operational. And in the meantime, the city of Kamloops caught up. So you've got the outskirts of Kamloops right on the edges of where they were looking to mine. So that's really some of the issues that they ran into there. That when they ended up, they were going to move towards reopening it back in, I believe, 2017, but they were running into issues with that. That being said, I wouldn't be too surprised to see potential land swaps being done because it is in partnership with KGHM, which of course is another major mining company. So perhaps there may be ways there that they're looking to get into production again. So with that as well, we're looking at the Sonic Zone, which is only about 30 kilometers to the south of it. It's along the same structural trend. And when we look at the Sonic Zone, the fact that we already have a 4.5 square kilometer geochemical anomaly, soils up to 4,500 ppm copper, just over 500 ppb gold, and that wasn't even covering the areas that we discovered in outcrop. So we last year especially made a couple of discoveries of mineralized outcrop just to the south. You see some very widespread styles of alkalic copper gold porphyry systems, styles of alteration that are typical of those. So we see widespread biotite phase, potassic alteration, multi-phase intrusive activity, speaking to a really long-lived intrusive complex in that area. And we know that runs copper. So at surface, we've collected rock grabs that run up to 1.1% copper. But also this past year, we expanded on that almost a kilometer away following widespread alteration and mineralization and took another sample that ran just over 0.4% copper. So we're seeing many host rocks. Yeah, so these were all done in outcrop. So this outcrop surprisingly was just starts a couple hundred meters south of the historical soil anomalies. But from what we can see in the historical reports, no one ever went to the south to even map it out or do any sampling. So we're the first ones to ever come across the rock outcrop, the first ones to ever sample it. So it's exciting to see that, especially when you see a very large soil anomaly just to the north. So with the sampling that we have done, we're looking to extend that soil anomaly to the south now over areas of mineralized outcrop that we identified.
You have done the soils. When are you looking to get the soils back and how and release them?
Yeah, so with those, those have started to come back. We're just waiting for all the soils to come in so that we can show a really comprehensive showcase of what the potential at Sonic is. So I would say we're looking towards that to be coming out here in the near term as well.
Why is Sonic a more attractive drill target than Kirby?
I think in terms of, so we're seeing some very high grade gold content at Kirby. So that as well is quite attractive. But I would say it's also in terms of just the scale size of the system. So Kirby Lodi looks quite large, but still not as large as the Sonic Zone. As well, we're just able to see more exposure within the Sonic area, more rock outcrop, more of an idea on alteration styles and areas that we could vector towards. Whereas Kirby has a thin veneer of till cover in most of the area. It's really only a very constrained area where you get outcrop coming out. So it's really with that that we're just looking to, yeah, expand on where we see a high degree of potential. We're collecting high grades in terms of copper in the Sonic area. And then we're also seeing some of that gold content as well. So just having those comparables to some of the similarities that we see at Ajax just draws strong comparisons that we really want to test out as we move forward and looking at that larger tonnage potential there. But Kirby and Lodi I see as adding significant value as well. Those have some strong anomalies associated with them, some good looking geophysics. So that's always another thing that we can have in our back pocket. And really, that's where I see the great value of something like Kirby, Lodi, and Sonic. They are going to be more of your typical, more widespread, perhaps larger tonnage, porphyry style systems. With that, we can maybe test them with a little bit of drilling, but it can't be the focus as we're going to get the best return on the higher grade potential that we see at Bertha. So we'll start with that higher grade potential, and then perhaps we'll add in the scalability of what the upside potential remains at Sonic and Kirby Lodi.
What work do you have left to do before Sonic is drill ready?
With Sonic, so once we get those soils and rocks coming in, we're planning to do an IP survey here in the spring as well prior to any drilling. So that's really the last piece of the puzzle that we need. So do the IP. Once we have all the soils and rock grab samples, that will give us a good geochemical vector model to really determine where the best area is to do an IP survey. And then we'll be able to follow that up ideally with drilling.
So drilling in Q2 probably.
Yeah, no, that would be the timing that we would be looking at this time.
When do you expect to get the permit?
So I do expect to get the permit in the spring. So looking towards that timeline of around March or so is the current goal.
How are your First Nations relations there, by the way?
So in terms of First Nations, we've got some very strong relationships with the NNTC, the Lower Nicola and Upper Nicola. They are the main groups that are representative of some of the other First Nations in the region. So we approached it in a way that very early on, even before submitting our initial permit application for the Kirby Lodi area, we approached all the First Nations to have conversations and discussions with them regarding even the notice of work application itself. So they were very appreciative of that approach. We've maintained those relations, those communications. We've also provided employment in this first year with the drill program at Bertha. So we're providing employment opportunities, areas where we can collaborate, work on environmental side as well. So yeah, I think we're looking at a good spot that we're in. We're looking at good, strong support, collaboration, and communication.
What does success look like at Sonic?
So I think with Sonic, I want to see that soil anomaly expand. In terms of the soils as well, we're looking to do a wider suite of elements so that we can get some good Pathfinder vectors coming off of that to zero in on where a potential core porphyry system could be. I would expect that there's likely to be the same trend structural controls to that as we see at Bertha. So we'll see a northeast trend and a northwest trend that's controlling probably the distribution of soils would be my expectation. And then in terms of drilling, what we would want to showcase is the scale size of it. So we would want to see something that has that size potential of being a larger tonnage system. And then we would want to see grades that are perhaps comparable to something like the Ajax porphyry just to our north.
That's very high grade.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll see, like, especially when you're drilling these larger porphyry systems, it can be unlike a new Afton style system. It can take a little more drilling before you do get into the core. But with that, like, really the initial drill goals there would be showcasing that there is something, a very large hydrothermal magmatic system that's host to the mineralization at Sonic.
And what does success look like at Bertha in terms of sort of, thickness and grade?
Yeah, so in terms of thickness, grade, like we're looking for intervals that are comparable to something like New Afton. So we do want to demonstrate that there is that down plunge, down dip extent, so going deeper. So we want to showcase that this thing has the capacity to go beyond 600 meters depth. But then we want to see intervals, I would say, around the average of what New Afton is. So average width of those intervals is about 100 meters. So we're looking at something that is around that average with grades that are, if we're looking at really to start things off with the first ever drilling, if we're getting around 0.4, 0.5% copper, I would be very pleased. If we're getting higher than that with some good gold content as well, then I'll be very, very excited.
So that's essentially capital allocation priorities is Bertha for another 4,000 meters in the first half of next year and 2,000 meters at Sonic.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I think we're sitting in a good position there of where we've demonstrated in that case the potential for another new Afton style system, while also adding in the first drill testing of one of our other three targets. So keep in mind, we do have 4 porphyry exploration targets, none of which have been drilled. These are the first ever programs to test those. And we're in a region where new discoveries have not been made for a fairly long time outside of Kodiak Copper, just to our south. So really, like that's been some of the first movement in decades. So if we're able to come in there, come out with some brand new copper gold porphyry discoveries with some higher grades, I think that will create a lot of excitement and really set ourselves up as a key player within the region.
With that, where do you envision Torr metals in a year from now?
With that, I think we're going to accomplish quite a bit with this first 9,000 meters of drilling. So we're looking to showcase efficiency of exploration, getting a lot of return for the work that we're doing. And then if we can showcase within the year as well that we do have that new Afton style target, that we do have additional porphyries on the property as well that could be of larger tonnage, then you're showing a very attractive project. And then with that added to the portfolio of other projects that we've got, we are looking here towards eventually moving towards acquisition. Transaction is the ultimate goal, but we will look to do whatever really brings the most shareholder value. So that's what we're working towards.